خلق السماوات والأرض بالحق يكور الليل على النهار ويكور النهار على الليل.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Kamaruddin speaking. This presentation is answering a question: is global sighting proven from Quran and Sunnah? And it has been asked many times in various form online, but most recently I was asked this by a radio presenter and also one of the imams, because they are looking at local and global. So I thought I will put together a few slides to explain this point, inshallah ta'ala, to benefit a wider audience. Before we go further, because we are talking about global sighting, we need to brush up or just review and the globe. The world is a sphere, is round, and you must have seen this model in a lot of our presentation. On the left side, we have a model where the Earth is spinning on its own axis, and let me change the pointer to, on its own axis, and the moon goes round the Earth and also in front of the sun. The important point I wanted to point out is that any one instant of time when the Earth is spinning on its own axis, only half of it is facing the sun, which is the daytime, and the other half is facing and opposite the sun, which is the nighttime. So the whole world is never night any one time. This is very important for moon sighting, because you can only see the moon on the 29th at night and not during the day. So half the world will not see it. So that's an important point to distinguish. And it just happens that is the Earth flat or round? Well, a lot of observation done by early Muslims, they visually saw at the time of lunar eclipse, the shadow of the Earth falling on the moon was round, and it was not a flat slit. So that's an important point. Now we're going to use this concept on the next slide, this day and night, and the text on the bottom is already explained. Okay. So if we go to the next slide, I have split the spherical Earth into a flat map, and showing the daytime on the left side facing the sun, and the nighttime on the right opposite the sun, and trying to answer two questions. One is the Earth flat or round? Well, if we start the visibility of the moon, this is a artificial curve, how the moon is become visible on the globe from the first sighting point in a parabola shape. So supposing the artificial dateline on the right side, on the eastern international dateline, the moon just becomes visible, and that coincides with the eastern dateline, and gradually the sunset moves towards the west. So the curve gets wider because the moon is getting older and higher and brighter, and as it grows toward the west, most of the world would see the moon easily. So because it overlaps exactly with 24-hour of the Gregorian day, with the 24-hour of the first visibility of the moon upward, then the whole world would be able to see the moon on the same day at their own respective sunset times, and hence Eid and Ramadan is likely to start on one day, one Gregorian date. So that's one point. And second point is that according to some of the tafsir of the Quran, this ayat, which you can read on the screen, saying, "See you not, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah merges the night into the day and merges the day into the night." Okay, so this merging of day and night has been explained by scholars to mean that the night slowly and gradually changes to daylight and vice versa, implying it is a sphere, it is round and not flat. The word yukawiru is merging is over a round object and not a flat object. So this is what the experts in the Quranic language have told us. Now I'm going to go on to the next slide where I am going to start the first visibility from the middle of the time zone. So before I had on the Eastern International Dateline, supposing in the following month, the first sighting starts at Greenwich Mean Time. And as you can see, this curve would probably show that countries in West Africa would see the moon. So that is, say, Morocco, and then all the Americas would see it. Now, the 24-hour of the lunar dateline. So imagine this curve is the starting point of a lunar dateline. So 24 hours of that will overlap say 12 hours over the Western hemisphere, and the next 12 hours will overlap on the next day over the Eastern hemisphere. So I mean the eastern half of the world. So that means technically it is possible for us to have Eid over 2 Gregorian dates, because the first visibility is from a different point on Earth every month. It is never from the same point like the Gregorian date. And there is another ayat which says that Allah created the heavens and the earth. In truth, He makes the night overlap the day, and makes the day overlap the night. And this overlapping has been explained by scholars. Yukawiru, this word, not only the subject is round, but the object is round as well. Just like a carbon coiling and the head, round head. You could have a rope round a square peg, but this is not in this case. It's saying that the object it is going round is also round. So from this ayat, we need to accept that the globe is round, and there are many fatwas to say that. The reason I am saying that the global sighting sometimes assumes the world is flat, but this is not the case, as I will make it more clear in the later slide. Now, I want to point out that some people say this round earth is the invention of the Yahud and Nasara. This is due to their own lack of understanding, because having studied the Quran, the early Muslim scholars from the 7th century, they were inspired to go and carry out measurement of distance and angle of different heights and establish that the earth is round. And one of the early scholars in Baitul Hikmah in Baghdad in the 8th century was Al-Farghani, who scientifically proved the earth was round. And this was present-day Iraq. So that was the house of wisdom under the Abbasid Caliphate. So previous to that, Al-Khwarizmi developed the mathematics, the Arabic numerals in the 7th century, and then he developed algebra to do the calculation of prayer times, Qibla directions, and the invention of trigonometry. And then later on in this 9th century, Al-Biruni used all that to actually calculate the phases of the moon, etc. So Muslim scholars of the past have already proven the earth to be round, even though at that time the Christian world was in darkness from around 400 to 1400, they called it Dark Ages. They didn't know much about the universe, while the Muslim were in Golden Ages, from 7th century to 16th century. They had the most scientific publications. So it is not true to say that Muslims didn't know it. It's only that since 18th century they lost. And all that knowledge came to Europe through Spain. Arabic was translated into Greek and Latin, or the other way around. And they based their learning, like Newton and Einstein. They took the research of scholars like Al-Khawarizmi and Al-Farghani to develop it further. So what they handed over to us now is not their invention, because they were in dark ages until 1600. So it is not true to say all this knowledge is of that of Yehud and Nasra. It is a misconception. Okay, now I'm going to come to the real, answering the real question. As you know, this ayat very well, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ, they ask you about the crescent moons. Why is it plural? We have previously explained. It is for two reasons. One is that Allah is asking us to sight the moon all 12 months and not just Ramadan and Eid. And also that every region should have their own phase of the moon. Like in Surah Yasin, Allah says the moon goes through phases, that each country should have their own look at their own phase of the moon. So this is inherent in this ayat of the Quran, to look for the moon from your own place. And next ayat, so whoever sights the moon, crescent moon of the month, let him fast it. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Okay, so Sheikh Saleh ibn Uthaymin have said on the commentary of this ayah, it means that those who do not sight will not fast. Now, refer back to that model previously. Half the world is day and half the world is night. So those who have sighted the moon in the night, whichever countries, they will begin fasting. Those who have not sighted it will wait until their sighting the next day. For example, Australia may sight the moon, but the America is still on their previous day. And when America sights the moon, Australia is already on their next day. So if they all follow their own sighting, then they don't have to start fasting, midday or in the afternoon. They just wait for their own respective sunset. So this also indicates due to the global nature of the earth, that whole world cannot sight the moon together, and the whole world cannot begin fasting together, because the earth is a sphere, a globe, and not flat, as was the belief in the early Christian Byzantine, that four angels are holding the four corners and God is having a throne above it. So that has been proven wrong, that it is not flat, it is sphere. And if it is sphere, you can only sight the moon at your own sunset. And even that, not the whole night, but about 1 hour after sunset, the moon will set. And this is more clear from the third ayat. So by the sun and its brightness, by the moon as it follows it. Talaha. So Qatada radiallahu anhu in Tafsir ibn Kathir says, this means when the sun sets, the moon will become visible. And obviously, the moon follows the sun, so it will set. So setting of the sun and setting of the moon is local to your specific horizon. The whole world sunset and moonset is not together. They're all different. So this indicates local sighting of your own location in your own country. Furthermore, now we are going to hadith that in the Kuraib Hadith were very well known, and we have a specific video on that explained by Mufti Sabiha from India. And in Tirmidhi that a Sahabi went from Medina to Damascus before Ramadan, and when he returned in Ramadan, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu asked him when they started, and he said they started on Friday, and Ibn Abbas said we started on Saturday because we did not see the moon before, and so Quraib asked Ibn Abbas, is sighting of Muawiyah in Damascus not sufficient for you? And Ibn Abbas in Medina said, no, this is how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has commanded us to do, i.e. follow our own sighting. هكذا أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So this hadith is quoted by all the Sahih Sitta muhaddithin to say every land follow their own sighting, every country to follow their own sighting. Now, in defense of global sighting, there is a hadith in Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and other books that narrated by Ibn Abbas that it was cloudy in Medina, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam decided to complete 30 days of Ramadan, and then next day, before Maghrib, after Asr time, some people came, or two riders came, and they said to Rasulullah that we saw the moon last night. And then Nabi Sallallahu decided to break the fast on the 30th day, and he commanded everybody to come for Eid the next day. So 30th day became the first of Shawwal, and they would do Eid on 2nd of Shawwal because the news didn't reach them. And so 2 points here, some scholars, present-day scholars, say this is a proof that global sighting, because the news came almost a day later, and so it could have come from anywhere in the world. And secondly, if the news reaches you that it has been sighted, then you must follow it. So they use this as an evidence. If we consider our understanding of the earth, then we should realize that these people did not come from the opposite side of the earth, because they were traveling on foot with their camels and their horses and their caravans, and they only traveled in the heat, 40-50 degrees of the Arabia, for 6 to 8 hours when it's cool. And so they couldn't have come more than, say, 20-30 miles. Even 50 miles, the whole of UK is 100 miles. So just because some people have come from 30 miles away from your location doesn't justify global sighting. And nobody ever tested this interpretation until 1980s, when international telephony became possible. So this is a new invention, even though the idea has been written in a lot of books from the 12th century onward. So this is a very weak evidence for global sighting. Another reason given, okay, we cannot do global sighting from west to the east, because by the time they see it, 8 hours later, 10 hours later, say in California, it is our next day here in the UK. So let's change that to only follow the east and not the west. And this is another ijtihad analogy by the recent scholars, and they take it from Ibn Taymiyyah, who said if there is a sighting in the east, then it must be sighted in the west, but not the other way around. And this was in the 14th century Damascus. Ibn Taymiyyah was a Hanbali scholar. If we look at the time period when this was stated, the news could not have come from very far. So they were referring to the boundary of their own country and not the whole world. So using this concept and Kuraib Hadith, it makes sense, boundary of your own country. But east-west does not, east-west of the whole world does not make sense. So I think there is a misconception using that sighting from the east. So based on Quran and Sunnah, yeah, I think there is ample evidence to prove that global sighting is not proven, but local sighting is. But there are a couple of questions I'll come to answer in a moment. But before that, I want to point out that this global sighting has been being campaigned by some people in Bangladesh. I think there is a small group who want to follow news from Saudi Arabia. But the scholars are saying that we can't do that unless there is proof from Quran and Sunnah. And they obviously they didn't find any proof, but they have studied. So Mufti Abdul Malik from Bangladesh, he is editor of an international magazine called Al Kausar, and it is read by many imams from Bangladesh in Arab countries as well as abroad, all the way to America. And he is able to collect research from throughout the world. And he made a study. There's a 36-page article he published, a research study on the issue of ikhtilaf matali in Ahnaf, Zahir Al-Riwayat books. And he found that this ittihad matla, meaning global sighting, or ikhtilaf matla, local sighting, the global sighting, unity of horizon, it is mentioned in many, many books, not in 20th century, also in 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, and it goes all the way to about 12th century. That's 500 year Hijri. It is mentioned, and that is why it is so well known amongst those who study fiqh. And so where did it come from? He could not find it in the books of Imam Abu Hanifa. So he found that there is a scholar by the name of Qadi Khan who mentioned it after 500 Hijrah, that this was the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa. And then everybody just took it on trust and copied it. So but now all the books are accessible in Arabic, and it is not found in the original books. So that's a misconception our scholars have to overcome. And even if this was said, they didn't have the means to test it, collect the news from far distant countries. So the local sighting of within your country, within your region, has been practiced from the beginning, from the time of Rasulullah, time of Sahaba, even time of Khulafa Rashidin. We know from the recent fatwa that people of mountain came to Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu and asked him, Ya Amirul Mu'minin, we are people of mountain. We do not see the hilal until a day later from other people. What do you command us to do? Now, Amirul Mu'minin could have said, okay, we will light a huge fire and give you a smoke signal. Or he could have said, send us a horse rider, or we will send you one, go to the mountain. Or he could have said, send us some pigeons and we will put a message and let it fly to you, as the crow flies and get to you within a few hours or something. But he said, no, you begin when you cite it, you end when you cite it. So this was the practice of Khulafa Rashidin. And we know there is a hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam which says, follow my sunnah and sunnah of my Khulafa Rashidin. So from Quran, Sunnah, and also lives of Sahaba and Khulafa Rashidin, local sighting is fully established. And I should also point out that global sighting bases on local sighting. So if we want to say, collect news from, say, Australia, if they don't do local sighting, we wouldn't get it as soon as we wake up in the morning, unless they cited it locally. And same in other countries. So everybody has to do local sighting and before they can share it with others. So local sighting is without a doubt is the original position of Quran and Sunnah. And anybody said that is second and third position, that is a misconception. And some of our Masjid committee members seem to think that it is an alien position, new position. Local sighting is a new position. It is due to their misunderstanding, their of lack of knowledge of the geography and astronomy, as well as the Quran and Sunnah of moon sighting. So that's an important point to realize. So in summary, global moon sighting concept does not have a proof from Quran and Sunnah, and it was not practiced by Khulafa Rashidin or later generation until some 100 years. So until 1980s, when we had cable under the ocean bed, BT charging £1.50 for an international call. Until we had that, we did not have means to collect it from other countries. We had to rely on our own sighting. And if we have Haraj, like some part of the world near the poles, 6 month days, 6 month night, how do they do local sighting? Well, Aqrabul Bilad, follow the nearest location. And this was also the advice given to the UK Muslims in the 70s and 80s, that if you can sight it through cloud, follow your nearest country, Morocco. But one of the reasons that I couldn't sight it is not only due to weather, but perhaps we were looking on the wrong 29th, because sometimes foreign 29th is local 28th. So the moon is in Mach. Like now, South America will see the moon tonight later on in a few hours' time, but West Africa would not see it, and we didn't see it either. So I've already mentioned this global sighting was first mentioned after 500 year Hijrah. It is not in the original books of Fiqh, in Zahir Al-Riwayat by Imam Abu Hanifa or any other scholars. So local sighting is proven to be the original position of Quran and Sunnah. There is one technical point I will explain a bit later. Frequently asked question. One of the questions people say that if there is a sighting in the east, then it is binding on the west to follow it. Lazim, the fiqh text, and I think you'll find it in Adha al-Mukhtar, Darul Mukhtar, Quduri, Shamian, or various books. If there is a sighting in the east, then it is wajib on the west to follow. It does not mean a global sighting, because they never had the means to test that across the globe. And they only had the means to test it end of their city, east and west. So we can apply that within any one country if what is Yarmouth in the east coast side the moon, then maybe the west coast in South Wales should accept it. Or the whole of UK, including Ireland, falls within the same visibility boundary. So maybe the whole visibility boundary of local sighting can follow the eastern sighting, whether it is Yarmouth or whether it is Margate, other country borders. So that we can apply, but not across the globe. That is a misconception. Now, I've got a shape of a football here, and this is to simulate a flat surface. So it's an analogy of flat Earth. Now, if we didn't have means of communication around the globe, and we only saw flat surfaces, like a person who is 5 to 6 feet tall, if you're on ground level, you can see your horizon about 2-3 miles away. Okay, so that's where the sky meets the earth. Okay, but if you go higher, you will see further. So imagine a flat surface on that football. And if you overlap the world map on top of that, you can approximate it plus the whole of Middle East, you will see falls within one of these flat earth. And whole of UK and Europe falls on one of these flat earth surface. So this is for a small part of the globe. You can made it. So maybe some scholars considered that small area to mean وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت. The word sutihat, sata is the root word, means to spread out, is to open, to make flat. But this is for a small area. As far as the villagers and the farmers are concerned, the surface is flat for them to do agriculture and grow fruits and vegetables. But that does not mean that because Allah has made a small area appear flat, that the whole globe is flat. Even a big rock or a stone would appear flat to a small ant, because it can only see flat surfaces until it walks further, and then you won't see the curvature. So I think in the defense of early text being flat, we can approximate small areas of earth flat, but that does not mean the whole earth is flat. And that is consistent with the early verse I mentioned, which Allah says that overlapping of day and night around a round object yukawiru implies the world is globe, round and not flat. So other point is that people in equatorial countries here would see the sunset almost same throughout the year, because whether they tilt towards the sun or away from the sun, the tilt is not much different near the equator, and so the moon also follows the sun, and they probably see it on the same place. So when you come to high latitude countries like the UK, and there is a great swing, about 100 degrees northwest to southwest. So spring and winter it is west, and then it goes the other direction. And so if you're not used to looking for the moon in different direction in different month, you would miss it even though moon was visible. So this is something that we need to understand compared to equatorial countries. The other point is the flatness is for short distances within a country, which I've already mentioned. So we cannot apply this flatness to the whole world, nor can we apply moon sighting globally, because the moon is not sighted the whole world at the same time, and it's never night and entire world. It is only part of the world is night, and of that only about an hour after sunset is night. But if everybody follows their own moon sighting after sunset, then they would be following according to the teaching of Quran and Sunnah, as we have evidences over 1400 years or 14th century. There is one other question that usually comes, follow the majority. Now, we need to understand what is meaning of majority. And I say, if you go to, say, a beach in Scarborough or Blackpool, the majority may not be covering their satar. So should we follow them? Clearly not, because it means majority who are abiding by the Quran and Sunnah. So where does this majority comes from? I've explained the hadith of traveler coming and the misconception coming from another world, part of the, it does not mean people are coming with news from another part of the world. And this majority comes from a hadith where Prophet ﷺ said that your Fitr is when all the people do Fitr, and your Adha is when all the people do Adha. Now, scholars have explained this to mean that in a country overwhelming moon sighting has taken place. Hundreds of people saw the moon, and they agreed to begin the month. So if a few individuals say, no, it hasn't been sighted, they shouldn't leave the overwhelming majority sighting. The other mean is that if in a Muslim country, a legal body, qadi in a court, carries out due legal process and taking citing, reporting testimony, and makes a declaration, and that's a legal order, and all the people in the country should follow it. In a non-Muslim country, Hilal committee who carry out due process of local citing, reporting, testimony, declaration, then everybody should follow it. That's the meaning of the majority. It never means that some majority following some foreign news, which might be reliable or not reliable, that is a wrong interpretation of this hadith. In the light of Quran and Sunnah, we have already explained. Now, quite often people will say, how do you get fatwa, follow fatwa? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has stated that I leave behind two things in his last sermon, Hajjatul Wida, that is my Quran and Sunnah, and that is the words of Allah and Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And if you hold on to them, you won't get astray. And in other hadiths is also included, follow his Khulafai Rashidin. Now, if the circumstances changes from what is established in Quran and Sunnah, what do we do? And that is why there is room for ijtihad, analogy, by a panel of muftis. So here the formula says legal ruling is equal to text from Quran and Sunnah plus context of the circumstances. One example would be in terms of ibadah. Allah orders us to pray in Jamaat, warqaw ma'arrakin, bow with those who bow. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said, stand shoulder to shoulder. But during the COVID lockdown, we were told to have 2 meter distance. So this is change of circumstances due to an exceptional case. So while we are still following Quran and Sunnah, the legal ruling would change for the duration of that exceptional circumstances. You may also have heard of a hypothetical situation. To save life is as though if saving the whole world. So if somebody with his family and their deathbed want water, and he says, I want water, he's given water because it's available. But if someone is traveling in a non-Muslim land and he wants water and they say, we don't have any, we only have alcohol, maybe his circumstances allow him to drink that to save life and not any further. So the fatwa, the ruling is equal to the text plus context. So some years ago in the 70s and 80s, the context was that we cannot cite the moon in UK. So the fatwa was Aqrabul Bilad. Okay. Now that we can cite the moon, the context has changed. So we have to revert back to Quran and Sunnah. So in conclusion, global citing is a misconception. It is not permissible. And certainly it is not practical to follow the West of another country like America, because it will be our daytime. And also the other way from the East is also not allowed, because we are able to cite the money in our country. Following the East, to your country's boundary will be within the right reasonable time. But going through all the way to the Southern Hemisphere, like South Africa or this in Australia or things like that, this would not be permissible according to Quran and Sunnah. Particularly wine, we're able to fulfill the rule of the calendar. And rule of the calendar is only 6 months you can sight the moon on 29th, and other 6 months you cannot. It's complete 30 days. So do not expect to sight the moon every month. And furthermore, it is possible for the moon to be not sighted 2-3 months consecutively. Even our neighboring Muslim country, Morocco, last year, they had 3 consecutive months, Safar, Rabiul Awwal, Rabiul Thani, and then they sighted it. And in UK, if we have few consecutive 30 days month, as long as it is made up with 29 few months later, then we still have a functional calendar, valid calendar. So it is important to establish local sighting, and regardless of how high or how low the moon is, because we don't need to look at low altitude on 30th or 31st or whatever, because we just complete 30 days after 29th. Okay. And finally, I want to show you that we have recent fatwa to state that if it's possible to sight the moon in Britain, then relying on other countries is not permissible. And so that is coming from Darul Uloom, from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. It is all in the fatwa book. Furthermore, even many decades ago, Saudi Arabia has given us the ruling: if the moon is possible to sight it in your country, you must follow your own country, not other country. Jazakallah khair. That's all I have to say. I can take some question afterward if you wish. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.